Okay, good. Good afternoon. I'm Claudette Jackson, and I am the Director of Student Engagement and Compliance Education. And I am here to talk to you today about your scholarship application. So some of you have had this before, and hopefully you've been able to put some of the tools to use. And if you have, I'd love to hear comments from you as we go along through this. Please feel free to stop me at any point to ask questions. But I definitely want you to think of this in terms of the analogy of a puzzle, okay? So it doesn't have to be as tough as a jigsaw puzzle would be. So what would you do when you have a puzzle? If anybody put puzzles together, even maybe when you were younger? So do you just dump it all out on the table and go for it? Or do you start organizing some of your pieces? Okay, do you get your corners, find all the corner pieces and whatnot? So similarly, you will want to organize your pieces for this. So you want to figure out what the components are of a good scholarship application. So these are a couple of pieces that you would put together. We're going to go through each of these separately, but know when your deadlines are. Make sure you have a resume. Make sure you keep track of your co-curricular transcript information. Make sure you review your completed application. Sometimes people are up against that deadline and they just hit the submit button. They haven't reviewed through it to make sure they've covered all the pieces. They haven't checked for grammar. They just hit the go button, and sometimes that could be enough to lose a scholarship because you didn't check the final pieces to make sure you had everything there. Okay, so let's talk about deadlines. Why are these important? These are very important because you don't want to put a lot of work into something and it turns out you missed the deadline by a couple of hours or by a couple of days. So you need to be mindful of the deadlines. They're also important because unless you guys are very, very fortunate individuals, you have other things going on in your life. So you're going to have to schedule time in for this scholarship because this is extra that you're doing. This is not a part of your coursework. This is not a part of your job that helps pay the rent. This is not part of just your daily stuff that you would do. So you need to be aware of the deadlines so you can make sure that you allow enough time to really put this together. So start to think about setting internal or personal deadlines. And you also want to do this because what happens? Oh, that scholarship's not due until May. So I have time. So you don't do anything for the first week that you find out about the scholarship except for look at what might be required. Okay, I can do this scholarship. This looks like something I can do. Next thing you know, a whole month has passed by and someone might have reminded you about it or you get a message about it or something and you're like, oh yeah, I need to work on that. But I do have this test I need to study for, but my favorite show is on, but I told my friend that I would da-da-da-da, all these things come up. And so another couple of weeks goes by and then you're down to the wire having to make the decision of do I spend the next 24 hours trying to really knock this thing out and put it together, or do I just forget about the scholarship altogether? So set your own internal deadlines. I'm going to research everything I need to for the scholarship. I'm going to work on the essay and have it at least a rough draft done by this day, this time. These are things that if you use the calendar on your phone, you can easily schedule those in. If you are a paper and pencil person, put it in your planner like you put anything else in your planner that's important to you. So make sure you set the deadlines, but just as important, stick to the deadlines that you put in there. I don't know how you all operate. Sometimes I need to trick myself. So if I have something, like I need to be at a doctor's appointment, I don't just put in my phone when the doctor's appointment is. I put leave time in there. I need to know that I have enough time in case I get stuck behind a slow driver or there's an accident or something, that I have enough time to where I'm not trying to rush into the doctor's office. And so I will give myself an earlier departure than what I really need to have. So in this case, you would give yourself probably an earlier deadline than what the actual deadline for the scholarship is. So that way you have time in case something comes up, a little bit of leeway for yourself, or you have time to have others take a look at the scholarship application for you to make sure that you've dotted your I's and crossed your T's. So issues waiting till the last minute. Stress, extra stress that nobody needs. Again, not having all your pieces together, not having your letters of recommendation. So if you wait to the last minute and then you look at your professor or your favorite person and said, hey, yeah, do you mind writing this letter for me? And they're like, yeah, sure, when do you need it? Tomorrow. Some people might be able to do it, but most people will not want to and or be able to knock out a good letter in a short window of time. So let's talk about gathering the materials. There's going to be certain things that you will likely need for your scholarship application. So letters of recommendation, awards, honors received. So you just received an honor today. That's something that if you don't write this down, if you don't put this in your co-curricular transcript or on your resume, I guarantee you when you're sitting down a month or 2 months from now trying to write out your application for your scholarship, you're not going to remember every single award or honor that you've received. It's just hard. How many of you can remember what you had for lunch last Wednesday? Not yesterday, yesterday Wednesday, last Wednesday, a week ago. Anybody? Okay. Then lunch is not as important as an honor, of course, but still, when you're sitting down trying to gather everything, it's just hard to put it all together. So list all the extracurricular activities that you either had a role in and the role you played in it, the amount of time you spent on these activities, and the impact you may have had. This might help give you the outline for something in an essay, because they usually want to know, in the PTK ones at least, about your service on campus and your service off campus. So you might remember that you helped out with something as part of PTK, but do you remember how long you spent on it? Not just the activity itself, but all the stuff behind the scenes to get ready for that activity. Do you remember the impact that it had? Maybe you just thought that this was going to happen and this was going to be the outcome, but afterwards you got an email or a letter or something on social media that said, this was so timely, I really needed this in my life. Thank you so much, Phi Theta Kappa, for being there, getting this done. So that's an impact statement right there that you would want to be able to include. Again, you're sitting down, it's 12 midnight, you're working on the scholarship application. Are you going to remember all of that? Even if you remember that someone made an awesome comment and it's somewhere in social media, are you going to be able to find that particular comment at that point in time? Probably not. So these are the types of things that you want to capture in the moment and put in your co-curricular transcript or on your resume and keep a log of that type of stuff. You can also call it your kudos file. So you know kudos is like something good. I keep just a folder. I put thank you notes in there. I put just positive things that I received. And sometimes it's just good to look at your kudos file when you're having a bad day. And you're, yes ma'am. So that really depends. We run a range in here from very traditional age, just graduated from high school, all the way up to I might have a kid the same age as somebody in here. So I would use judgment in that. If you just graduated from high school and all of your activities occurred like literally in the last year, if they do not indicate in the scholarship application a time frame or collegiate activities, then I would say stuff that occurred that year before. So if anybody is on the younger end, you can probably dip back into the high school realm of stuff. If you are removed from high school by at least 5 years or more, I would say unless you did something amazingly significant, like that was earth-shattering of an event or something, I wouldn't include anything from that would be that old. So I would stick to more recent stuff within the past couple of years or during your collegiate experience, if it's that type of scholarship. So membership number, certification, etc. I used to get this call as Phi Theta Kappa advisor of, I'm applying for such and such at another school. What's my membership ID number for Phi Theta Kappa? Keep up with that type of stuff. So that's something that you would also want to include for any other memberships that you might have, again, on that co-curricular transcript or on that resume. And I would say not everybody's going to keep a co-curricular transcript. That's just extra work. I would say just have page 2 of the resume ready to go with all of these other things on it. This is not something you would ever turn in for a job because nobody needs your membership numbers and whatnot for a job that you're applying for, but that's the page that you can just have for yourself to have all this stuff logged. And then of course, have something that looks like a resume. For those of you, again, who are younger, you might not have had work experience, you might not have volunteered a lot, and so your resume might not even fill up a half a page. But through your time with Phi Theta Kappa and other organizations at MCC or through church or through anything else that you do, start thinking about those types of activities that you can include on there as you're gaining additional experience. Others of you, you've been in the workforce, you're just coming back to college now, so you have a plethora of information to include skills, leadership, whatnot, because of your past experiences. So for some of you, it might be half a page. For others of you, you might have 3 pages worth of information to include on there. Again, consider what is more recent and more pertinent rather than every single thing you've ever done in your life because it might not be relevant to what you're applying for. Okay, so let's talk about this resume co-curricular transcript. What do you need to have on it? Definitely your education and or educational aspirations. So again, for some of you, this is your 2nd degree or 3rd degree. Others of you, you just recently graduated high school, so this is your first go at it. So if you haven't attained a degree yet, then you would put that you are going for a particular degree and the potential graduation date on that resume. For those of you who have degrees, you would include the other degrees that you've worked on or completed, and then the one that you're currently working on. Your campus involvement, that is something that you would probably have just a different category, and how you set this up is up to you. If you were to Google resumes, you would see so many different styles out there. There's no one right style. There are more traditional styles, and I can tell you, depending upon who's looking at it, they do like to see the traditional styles. I've seen some where there's a left-hand frame, and in the left-hand frame are quotes about them. And so when they were in my class, they were an awesome student and just a pleasure to have. This was a hard worker or whatnot. For me, that doesn't ring at all. But for others, they like to see the little snippets about the individual. So it's just a different, non-traditional style. Another style I've seen does not list job, 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 job. It's a listing of skill sets, and then a little bit of information about their jobs, and then information about their extracurriculars that they've done. That's a different way of looking at it, especially when these are going through those systems that are looking for keywords to see if you would be a match. So I can see the purpose in one like that. So really think about who your audience is. If your audience is for a scholarship application through Phi Theta Kappa, so this is the scholarship committee, I would probably stick with a little bit more traditional. If your audience was Indeed.com and you're trying to find a job, I would go with the skill set ones so those keywords pop up so the Indeed tracker picks those keywords up. So again, you can have different versions of the same resume. Community service, you'll want to have a section that specifically states that, so keep those things separate. Scholarships and awards, and again, your work experience. So again, how you set this up is up to you. There's lots of good templates to take a peek at. Even Microsoft Office has their own version of templates of these. If there's someone that you know who's doing well, who might have already got a couple scholarships or has a good job, ask to see what their resume looks like. When I was in grad school, that was quite common. Everybody was kind of sharing resumes around, and so you can figure out how to build it in a way that's appealing to your discipline or your career. Okay, so here's the other thing. Keep this document current. If the last time you worked on a resume was part of a class project and that was 2 years ago and you haven't touched it since, I really hope some things have changed for you in 2 years. I really hope that you've done some service or had another job or built some skills or something to include in that. So I'm not even the best about this of adding in things as it happens to my resume. I'll think about it and I'm like, oh, I need to put that in there. And then I get busy doing something else. And so the only time I end up updating it is when someone says, oh, do you mind speaking at this? Can we get a copy of your bio and your resume? And I'm like, yes, in about 10 minutes you can get that because I need to update it real fast. And then I'm sitting there going, okay, what year was that? Was that last year that I did this? Or was that the year before? Was that, how many people were there? And so I start trying to jog my memory to think, what happened? What do I need to include so I'm accurate? Because you don't want to, fluff this stuff either. And so it's better to do it as you go along. This is also helpful. Someone I know is going to go to grad school now, and they asked me to write a letter of recommendation for them. And so I of course, agreed that I would, and I need to get on that actually. And she goes, I've included a copy of my resume for you. I know her and I know things about her, but it's helpful for her to give me a copy of her updated resume because now I can say specific dates. There's might be things in there that I don't know about her that I can include in that letter of recommendation to make it a little bit more robust than it would have been otherwise, as she's a good person, a good worker, that type of thing. I can give specifics. Okay, so who do you ask for letters of recommendation? I have had students I've known for barely a month or so ask me in the past for letters of recommendation. While I am not opposed, I would probably not be the best person to write a letter of recommendation. I don't know you. You want it to come from someone who can really speak to who you are as a person. We can sit down and get to know each other a little bit, but I still don't know you. So you would want to ask someone, of course, who will give you a good, glowing letter of recommendation, someone who's known you for a particular length of time. There are times when they'll specify a personal reference who has known you more than 5 years, a professional reference who's known you at least 2 years, something along those lines. Other times it just says letter of recommendation, 2. And so you just need to pick 2 people that you think would write you the recommendation that's going to be helpful. When you are asking the individual to write a letter, tell them what it's for so you don't get a generic letter of recommendation. Because somebody can tell someone how awesome you are. But if it's specifically about a sustainable blah, blah, blah scholarship and you are totally into carbon footprint erasing and just being a sustainable person, then they can write specifically about how you have impacted your local community on that particular topic rather than they're a great person and totally deserving of the scholarship. So be very specific. Back to the who do you ask. I actually had someone one time list me, didn't tell me they were listing me, wanted me to provide a recommendation, and I was not comfortable with that at all. So I didn't really respond. And then I got a phone call from the place needing the recommendation. And so I said, off the record, I don't want to do this. And they said, this is what we need to know. Why don't you want to do it? I said, as long as it's not going to be recorded anywhere, I shared why I didn't want to do it. Because I did not feel that that individual, given that particular thing that they were going for, would have been the best for it. And so I did not feel in good conscience that I could write that letter of recommendation for that person. And I was quite surprised that they listed me for that. I was actually kind of stunned. So make sure that who you're asking really does know you well and have your back and support you, so you don't get one of those really awkward situations like that. Does the application specifically state what types of letter of recommendation? We already talked about that, personal versus professional. Make sure you allow enough time for them to complete it. I think 2 weeks or more are plenty, but if it's busy time and you're asking your professor to do it and they're about to start grading finals, that's probably not going to work for them. But if it's the summertime, they're not teaching classes, but you have a relationship with them to where you can email and say, hey, can I get this by the time school starts again? That might work out wonderfully. Find out what the method needs to be in. So many of these are uploaded now. I can't think of the last time I actually handed a letter to somebody. I've usually just created it in Word, saved it to PDF, and upload the document. Confidential or open. I see this quite a bit. You, as the student, can indicate whether or not you want to see a copy of it when they're digital, or if you want to leave it confidential. In some cases, when they're uploaded, they don't give you an option. There's not a right or wrong to that at all. I think it's good to be able to see what's in some of these letters of recommendation, but just know that you might be asked that. Keep a copy for your records. This is so important. Again, it goes in your kudos file, but if this is one of those awesome letters of recommendation, feel free to ask that individual next time you apply for another scholarship that's similar to say, hey, can we make a few changes to this and update the date on this, and can I use this one again? Instead of asking the individual for a whole new one. So just have a copy of that one ready to go. Say, you wrote me such a wonderful letter of recommendation before. I would love to use this for another scholarship, but there's just a few things we needed to change. Do you mind doing that? Most people will be like, yes, because I just need to change a couple of things. That'll take me 5 minutes, as opposed to sitting down and going. And I don't know about the other faculty in here, but I stress over letters of recommendation. I want this to go well for you. You've asked me, which means you trust me to write something about you that's going to help you get this job or this scholarship or whatever it is that you're going for. And so there's a lot of pressure there. And so we want to do well by you, or do right by you. Writing your own letter. This is a little different. I've done this for some. When I'm super busy and I just know that there's no time that I'm going to be able to get to it, and it's more of a generic type of scholarship, I will say, hey, let's do this. You write it, but I reserved the right to make any changes to it. And it's worked out pretty well in the past when I've done that. So that's just a different way of doing it. Some people might balk at that. Just know that if they're more traditional, they might go, what do you mean you're going to write your own letter of recommendation and I just make changes to it as I see fit? But if it's somebody who's really busy but still really wants to help you, just make that as a suggestion. And they might be open to it. And don't forget to say thank you afterwards. And also let them know if you got the scholarship. There's times when I never hear what happened afterwards. And there's times when they run by and they're like, oh my gosh, let me tell you what happened. I'm a finalist now. And so we want to celebrate with you. We want to know these things that go well for you. So definitely feel free to let us know what happens as a result of that. But also say thank you for writing. It does not have to be a traditional thank you note. It could be an email thank you. It's just acknowledging that someone took the time. Okay, so what is the scholarship for or about? Who's awarding the scholarship? So I'll give you an example. Let's say, I'm just going to pick on something. Do we have any flat earthers in here? And if you are a flat earther, that's okay. Okay, good. Now I'm going to pick on flat earthers. So let's say you are applying for a scholarship. You see the amount of money, you see the deadline, you see there's only one essay. You're like, cool, I've got this. Oh, but it's about the philosophy of a flat earther. Is this something that you can stand behind? If you won this scholarship, could you become the poster person for this cause? So that's something that you have to reconcile within yourself. If you're like, I can be a flat earther for now for $5,000, then that's you, your own ethics and feelings about things. But if you were awarded that scholarship and you're not comfortable with that, think about what the time that it takes, who that scholarship could have gone to instead of you if you're not okay, if that goes against your beliefs. What are the stipulations for scholarship recipients? So anybody ever apply for the MCC Foundation scholarships? So what are the stipulations? What do you have to do if you get a scholarship?
To get a scholarship?
No, if you get the scholarship. And? Yep, go to the dinner. So not a whole lot at all, but if you have a crazy work schedule and family and whatnot, that could be one extra thing that you're just like, okay, I got to do this too. So just make sure you understand what's being asked of you if you get the scholarship. Again, for us, it's not a big deal, but for other scholarships, there might be a whole lot more that go along with, more things that go along with it. You have to adhere to, believe in, be a part of, et cetera, the organization in order to apply for the scholarship. So I sometimes say go for it anyways, because I've heard stories before where people have gone, or the scholarship has gone unused for a period of time, so they're just more than happy to get an applicant. But also know that if you're applying for the Daughters of American Revolution scholarship and you cannot trace back to that, you're probably not going to even be in the running for it. But if you have the time, why not apply for it? See what happens. Understand the minimum qualifications. If it says you need to have a 4.0 GPA and you have a 3.95, don't think, it's the 3.95, I'm so close, they'll take it. If they say 4.0, unless you have anything, little asterisk, something in parentheses, they want a 4.0. If they say you have to have 30 hours completed and you have 29 hours completed, then you don't qualify to apply for that scholarship. The good thing about the Phi Theta Kappa Common application is that it'll take you through all those questions to where you don't have to decide for yourself. But there's so many other scholarships out there that they are banking on you having read through the minimum qualifications and understanding that you do or do not meet them, and then applying for it or not applying for it. And so when they do verification, either through FAFSA information or other information, and you don't meet the minimum qualifications, they don't just put you in the maybe pile at that point. You didn't meet the qualifications, and so you don't get that scholarship. So that's a lot of time that you might have put into something for something you do not qualify for. Provide only what is asked. It just cracks me up sometimes when people want to give a whole portfolio. They want 2 essays from you and your transcript. And you're like, and here's me as a kid, 3 years old, and here's me at my first blah, blah, blah. Here's my christening picture. I mean, they don't need all of that stuff about you. It's interesting, it's great, it's special, but they want specifically this information, so provide what is only asked for. Be realistic. Sometimes in these essays, we want to be interesting, we want to be appealing and stand out, but you also need to have realistic goals within them. So make sure that you are not presenting yourself with some far-fetched idea, because they want to know that the money is going to someone who's going to use it for a purpose and not for, I want to finish up at MCC and my 6-year goal is to be a doctor. Well, that just doesn't, the math doesn't work. There's just no way. Even fast tracking that, there's no way. So make sure what you're doing is realistic. Okay, so let's talk about preparing that essay. And again, stop me if you have any questions, okay? So most scholarships, there will be something that you have to write, even if it's a personal statement, even if it's a leadership statement or something along those lines. There's usually a written portion. If there isn't, and I know for the Phi Theta Kappa transfer scholarships, sometimes it's just a matter of putting down that PTK member ID number and you are good to go. Count yourself very lucky, because usually you're going to have to put some time and work into it. So make sure you pay attention to the length. Again, these digital scholarships now, it will cut you off, just like Twitter. So if you have typed a single character over, that's it, there's no more space for you. If it happens to be a paper application, which they still exist, make sure that you have done a proper word count. Type it up in Word first, make sure Word looks at it and gives you the word count, so that way you do not get disqualified on something as little as not having the proper length. If it says 500 words and you give 150, I love people who are concise. I think it's great, but they are telling you, we want to know this much about you or about this topic, so don't skimp them on that information. Provide enough. It doesn't have to be 500 words exactly down to it, but yeah, don't just give like 3 sentences and call it a day. Are you grasping at straws? Sometimes people start talking in circles or writing in circles, and it just starts to kind of go over the river and through the woods. That's where you go back to being concise. Don't just start filling in stuff just to get to the word length. Make sure you have a beginning, middle, and end. You're accurately addressing the question or statement at hand. Are you responding to all parts of the essay? So what I like to do for this area is, if it's got an essay prompt that's about 6 sentences long, look within each of them, and I'll number. So they want to know this, that's number 1. They want to know this, that's number 2. And just kind of go through and make sure that I figured out everything that they want to know. And then as you write it, check it off. Did I cover that? Did I cover that? Did I cover that? So create your own checklist to make sure you fully responded to every portion of that essay. Would it make sense to anyone else who reads it? People like to put acronyms down. So they'll put MCC, PTK. Well, of course, if you're doing a PTK scholarship, people know what PTK is, but they don't know what MCC is. They don't know any of the other acronyms that are in and around Waco, Texas, or anything else that you're a part of. You need to spell things out so they have an understanding. No one wants to spend time on Google trying to figure out what the heck you're talking about to fill in the blanks. So make sure anybody else picking this up can get the same picture that you are trying to put out there for them. And don't forget grammar. I used to look at the All USA scholarships, and I tell you what, for people who have 3.5 and higher GPAs, the grammar was hideous sometimes. And I think it's because it became a rush. It wasn't a carefully planned out process for the scholarship application. It was oh crap, that is due really soon. And so people just start typing and they don't go back through and look at the grammar. So, reviewing the entire application, create a checklist for everything. Did I get the letters of recommendation done? Did I get the personal statement? Have I addressed all the essays? Did I get my financial statement, my FAFSA, or whatever it is that they want? Did I get all the pieces that they were asking for? Incomplete applications don't get reviewed. It doesn't matter how wonderful everything else was or how awesome you are as a person. You did not, they don't know you typically. So that just gets pushed into the no pile or deleted. Is what you have put together truly reflective of you and what you do? I see people sell themselves short a lot. You've done awesome things during your time here, but you're just like, yeah, I volunteered a little bit and I did this and that's it. Expand on that. What all have you done? Really talk about how you made changes happen. Can you enhance any portion of it? So I don't want you to think of that as embellishing. You're not saying I created something awesome and I helped 5,000 people when you might have only helped 5 people, but it's all in how you write it. So you always give an example of a girl I worked with before. We sat down together because she wanted help with her application, and she goes, I don't do anything but go to school and go to church. And she says, I don't have volunteering. I don't have anything to include for this. And I said, well, let's talk about what do you do? What do you do when you're on campus? She goes, I go to class. I don't do anything else. I'm not a part of any organizations except for, I think she was Phi Theta Kappa. She had to be Phi Theta Kappa. And I said, okay, what else do you do? When you're at church, what do you do? She goes, well, I work with the youth. I said, okay, what do you do with the youth? Well, I have a backpack program. We do school supplies. I teach them. I do this. I mean, and she just started talking and talking and talking. I was like, there it is, right there. And so we really went on that as her service that she did. And I said, don't just say, I help the youth. Go into it. Create programming for the youth to be successful in their education through adequate supplies and tutoring service and blah, blah, blah. So you could say, I help the youth, or you can go into detail about what that means for helping the youth. So you also want to make it interesting enough. They see tons of applications. I've actually been on a local scholarship committee before. Oh my God. So at first you're excited. You're like, yes, someone's going to get the scholarship. This is great. And then you start reading through these and just reading through these and you're like, okay. You don't want your scholarship application to read like a vacuum cleaner manual or anything along those lines. Please make it a little interesting and of course reflective of you. So don't make it so dry, because you start reading through one of these, reading through 10 of these, and it just starts to like, whew, your eyes cross after a while. And then you also want to stand apart from other people as much as you can. You are all unique individuals. You are all smart individuals, otherwise you would not be in Phi Theta Kappa. So keep in mind that when people are applying for these Phi Theta Kappa scholarships, or if you're applying for any other merit-based scholarship, you're applying with people who are also smart individuals. So where you could rely on your academics in the past for other things, you're in a pool of other people who are doing well academically. So what sets you apart? When you think about Phi Theta Kappa again, it's a 2-year college program, correct? So everybody else is a 2-year college student. What is very common about 2-year college students? You have a lot of non-traditional students, you have a lot of working students, you have a lot of students with families. So that does not necessarily set you apart either, because there's other people who have the stresses of family, this, that, and the other. So really think about that, who you are applying along with, and who your audience is for reading about this. Because if you were applying for a more traditional scholarship and you're saying, I work 40 hours a week and I'm taking 18 hours and I'm also managing my family and I'm doing this, that means a lot when you're up against a traditional 18-year-old who's like, yeah, social media takes up a lot of my time. I'm an influencer. So that's a little different. And so if you're up against other 2-year college students, they have similar profile stuff to what you have. So make sure you stand out. Save a copy of everything. You do not want to recreate the wheel. You have put all this work in to getting these pieces together. Create a file that has your essays in there, because I guarantee you, your leadership style essay, your community service essay, you will see these prompts are very similar prompts again. It's easy to cut and paste, save it into the Dropbox, OneDrive, whatever you use, pick a cloud, and then tweak it for another scholarship instead of sitting there when you're doing the other scholarship going, man, I wrote an awesome essay before. What did I put in that essay? All you gotta do is cut and paste it. This is the one time when you can plagiarize yourself, and it's okay. No one's gonna bust you for plagiarism on this one. So don't reinvent that wheel. Make it easier for yourself for future applications. Just change it and make it applicable. Don't forget to go back and change it and make it applicable. Do not say, I'm so excited to be applying for this leadership scholarship, and you're actually applying for a service scholarship. So go back through there with a fine-tooth comb and take those things out of your essay so it is applicable to what you are applying for if you're recycling portions of it. So, any questions? Yes, sir.
So as from a reviewer's perspective, is formatting a distraction from the essay itself?
Are you getting creative?
Document, wrong font, size of the font, is that,
Yes.
how important is that? Do you have a suggestion?
So again, most things are digital now, so you can't really control that anymore, thank goodness. But yes, if you're looking at something that is a paper document and there's too much spacing in there, or people got really creative, or I'm gonna make it like 16-point font because I didn't figure I had enough to say here, but I wanted to fill up the space. Stay standard. Everything that you might have learned in your English class, you probably want to apply it here. So don't try to get fancy with it unless this is a scholarship that has something to do with creativity or whatnot, to where working outside the box is okay. Then at that, all bets are off. Do whatever you need to do to stand out. But typically, you don't want to stand out on that part. It is a distraction, and you'll be remembered for the wrong reason. Yeah. Any other questions? So of course, it is not available yet for you to get started on, except for the one scholarship for nurses. So that's the only one that's available, but look at other outside scholarships. So it does not have to be just the Phi Theta Kappa Common Application scholarship for you to get started on. Even if you just need practice on this, and I know who needs one more thing to do in their lives, but just go out there, think about what your major is. So if you are a social work, mental health, one of the allied health areas, just start Googling scholarships for 2-year students, or scholarships for women, or scholarships for fill in the blank, and see what's available. And you might just want to see what the deadlines are and try your hand at one of those scholarships too, just to kind of put this into practice. When does the MCC Foundation one come available? Summer to fall? Does anybody remember? So it opens up early fall. Okay. So those of you who are will be returning students, that's definitely one you want to look at. There's so many donors out there that have put money towards MCC students that there's no reason not to apply for one of those scholars. Or you almost apply in a similar way, if I remember correctly, where you don't have to go through and read through all the scholarships. You just kind of it looks at your information and determines what you might be eligible for. So definitely try your hand at it. It's less stressful when you're just doing it just for practice than when you're really saying, I need this money or else I can't do the next step in my educational goals. So look at those real hard. For those of you who are transferring, there's plenty of transfer scholarships out there. So start researching transfer scholarships. A lot of the collegiate ones, the deadlines have passed, meaning it's through the college itself. Those usually happen in early spring. So just keep an eye on those. There might be some that might be a little bit later, but by the time we get into March, usually those scholarships are pretty much taken. But if you have another year before you're ready to transfer, start researching those now so you can be aware of the deadlines for next year, and you can be ready to go for those scholarships. There's lots of money out there. I know people hear that all the time. There's tons of money available out there. It's just being able to tap into it. And not all of them are merit-based. Some of them are need-based. So that's another thing to pay close attention to, is what type of scholarship it is that you're applying for. Any other questions or comments? Okay.